mechanics and not leverage on DeFi mechanics to start to create a game. Those games were funny, and you could see from the initial growth of the web games. Those type of games were very hyped at the beginning. I remember when I was younger to play Tribes and the other games. Sorry, I'm not recalling the names in Portuguese, not in English. But those type of games kind of faded away along the time because they were suppressed by others, especially MMORPG with 3D levels. And I think that's what we can bring into Web3 and onboard new users with. So yeah, thank you for having me here. I'll pass on the mic to another one of my fellow panel members. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Andrew, welcome to the panel, sir.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm host and executive producer at Illuvium, and the title of this panel is "How's it going?" I think the best way to see how it's going right now in Web3, crypto gaming, blockchain gaming, metaverse, whatever we're going to call ourselves, is to just compare where we're at right now with where we were during the 2021 metaverse boom and bust. So when the 2021 metaverse boom happened, every media outlet, as you guys are aware, and even publicly traded companies had to put the word metaverse in their shareholder calls, in their media releases, and somehow sneak in that word into all of their press in order to get interest, because it was the hot tech of that time, similar to AI today. And then when everybody came in to check out what's happening here in blockchain gaming in the metaverse, the games were all low quality, single A, or some were double A quality, disappointing gamers. And that was a huge issue. And it got made fun of extensively. Obviously, there's the very famous example of Mark Zuckerberg and his Eiffel Tower pick, you guys are aware of. Then the games promised interoperability with other games. Imagine in our game, I heard on so many pitches, there's a portal and you'll go straight into the sandbox. That was just straight up a lie. That's 5 to 7 years away at least in terms of games being interoperable with each other. So further disappointment in the market, investors, gamers, in terms of interoperability. And then if anybody was interested in these low quality games that were making promises that they couldn't keep, then it was incredibly difficult to join in the 2021 metaverse boom. You needed like a PhD in DeFi to set up a MetaMask and then lock and load your hardware wallet and then figure out how to be on an exchange. And you'd have to watch like a 26-part tutorial on YouTube to even figure out how to get in. Huge problems. It resulted in basically a boom and then let's say an 80 to 90% bust, not only in terms of things like prices, but interest in this space. So where are we at today? And what do we need to do today so that when the next wave of interest comes along, we're prepared to capitalize on the moment and not to completely disappoint the market? So the first one was games being low quality or lower quality than what people wanted to see. Well, games are now headed towards AAA quality. There's a few of them out there in development that are at least trying. Illuvium looks like it's going to be to market before the other AAAs. And that's a big part of Illuvium's value proposition, is that the graphics, the gameplay, the characters, the universe, the intellectual property looks as good as, if not better than the games you're currently playing. That's what people think when they think metaverse and blockchain gaming in the future, guys. Your game cannot look like it was made 20 or even 10 or even 5 years ago. It needs to look like it was made 5 years from now in the future. And if your game doesn't look like that, I think you're going to disappoint consumers. The next point is the interoperability bit. We jump straight to Ready Player One in the metaverse boom, promising Game 1 will be interoperable with Game 2. Well, what about having your own games be interoperable with each other as a first step? No one took that first step except for Engine. They did that. And Illuvium is now making a game universe where our own games are interoperable with each other. I encourage everybody here who's building in this space, make your own games interoperable with each other on a game design level first, before even talking about or even mentioning you being interoperable with other game studios and publishers. And people will be able to experience that with Illuvium in our open beta later this year. And then the last part is onboarding. I don't know how many thousands of times I've heard people say, we need better onboarding. Well, there are some solutions happening right now for onboarding. There's two parts. IMX Passport, if you haven't checked it out yet, is a great example. You can make a wallet on IMX Passport in like, I don't know, like 15 seconds. That's pretty good. Let's get it down to like 5 seconds if we can. And then the other option is just making your games just straight up free to play with no requirement whatsoever for any wallet, any crypto, any NFTs, any blockchain, just free to play. Let people in, let them fall in love with your intellectual property, let them get hooked on your game loop, and then later on, if they decide to opt in on the blockchain side, give them that option with something incredibly fast, like an IMX Passport, where they can make their wallet in 15 seconds. So I encourage the entire industry to focus on those three areas, get the quality of your games up to AAA, make your own games interoperable with each other before promising being interoperable with other game universes, and then go free to play. Let people play your games without even touching the blockchain. And then when they do touch the blockchain, make it a matter of seconds for them to onboard. If we do that, then we can attract tens of millions of gamers and then actually retain them the next time around and not have 90% of them bleed out and laugh at us in retrospect.
I think that deserves a mic drop.
I think so too. I was gonna say, Andrew here preaching to the choir. What a way to start this off. Yeah, I'm loving everything. I'm not gonna hug the mic at all. Mr. Ian, welcome to the panel.
Hey, how you guys doing? Appreciate it. Actually, I pronounced my name Ian. So far we've got a Mike and Miko. We've got Ian and Ian. So we're off to a great start. Anyways, my name is Ian Bentley. I'm the CEO of WAGMI Games. We are a mobile tower defense game that we're launching here on the app stores shortly. It's funny seeing all of the posts having to do with Axie Infinity. We've been in talks with Apple for the last 6 months, so we know exactly what's happening as far as NFTs and mobile strategy, and we're all systems forward. We think that the biggest issue right now that we're solving with WAGMI Games and WAGMI Defense is the friction. And I think, Andrew, you pointed on a little bit of it, but we're taking it the next step forward, where you can still own your assets in a custodial wallet. So why even make somebody have to set up a passport? Why not just create their wallet for them? So essentially, free to play, absolutely. Could completely disagree with you, Miko, as far as free to play is dead. We believe that the IDFA issues as far as user acquisition, those can be solved with better marketing and IP, right? Transmedia focus, so that you have different types of mechanisms to get people into the game instead of just these copycat games, which I think, Andrew, that's what we saw here in the last year and a half, are just straight up copycat games where it's the same exact IP instead of stuff like you guys are doing on the Luvium, where everything seems very original. But what we're focused on is making sure that there's zero friction. So free to play, come in and play the game. Play as a guest. You don't need to even set up an account. When you purchase things within the game, you don't need crypto. Just allow people to pay with fiat directly from the app stores, right? You don't need to have any of that whatsoever. When people do purchase the digital collectibles, quote unquote NFTs, right? We talk about NFTs. People outside of Web3 don't care about the technology. But what we can do is once they do purchase these digital collectibles in our games, at that point, if they want to trade them, right? If they want to be able to buy them, sell them, discover that their secondary market, educational funnels after the fact are huge, right? So at that point, you have somebody come into a game, they play for free, they can purchase things without even setting up an account. If they actually want to start trading, that point, that's when you start introducing things like wallet, or even gamifying the education. Hey, we'll give you some extra, an extra card in the game, or we'll give you an extra, bit of, in-game currency to spend within the game if you just watch this 30-second bit on what is blockchain, or what is an NFT, or what is crypto, or how can you be able to leverage crypto within a game and make it more exciting. And that's essentially what we believe is going to be the strategy moving forward. And for anybody who is building, we believe that focus on being able to get somebody in as quickly as possible without even mentioning wallet, without mentioning NFTs, without mentioning anything having to do with blockchain. Because it was funny, I was randomly on a group on Facebook. I go to Facebook like once every week or so just to kind of check in with friends. But there's one group that was in there saying, what happened to NFTs? And literally every single comment was Ponzi scheme, right click. I mean, it's still the same narrative outside of, our echo chamber that we have here. But if we can all start talking about the language and how we're going to approach gamers outside of the 3% of people that have even touched anything having to do with blockchain in the world, and focus on the 97% of the people that essentially still want to play fun games, but give them the ability to say, hey, listen, you own this asset and you can do with what you want to. And just real quickly, I'll let everybody speak, but one of the questions that's been posed to me a couple times is, why Web3 versus Web2? Because, as people have seen, there's, in-game assets that are traded for quite a lot of money. But what happens if, let's say, Apex Legends Mobile closes, right? And you've now spent like $200,000 on this amazing gun skin. Well, what happens is you lose that money. It's worthless. Where the blockchain solves that problem. So even after Wagme Defense is gone, even after Illuvium's retired, even after all of these games in 10, 15 years from now, you can still trade the digital collectibles on the blockchain. And I think that is the education that we need to start explaining to people, to get people on board so that they see the bigger picture as to why Web3 versus Web2. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you, Ian, for that. Yeah, we pride ourselves in trying to educate as people as much as possible, not just Web3 gaming, but the whole Web3 space in general. I believe next up we had Mr. Mayhem. Mayhem, welcome to the panel.
Hey, you guys can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Good to be here. Man, that's tough to follow. A lot of really, really good points raised. I'll give a quick TLDR on me. So I'm helping build a company called Apex. So we're an acquirer and an operator of iOS apps. So I have a lot of things to say about the iOS news that came out earlier this morning. And then I also run a crypto newsletter called 50Nest. I got my start back in gaming almost 10 years ago now when I was 15, built a company to 15 people called Block by Block. We did custom Minecraft maps for famous YouTubers, which is a fun market to be in back in 2014, 2015. The two things I'd echo quickly, really good points raised by Andrew and Nico and Ian around one, we just figured out, I think, what's important in games, like leading with high fidelity, strong games, not necessarily completely on chain, right? Mint if you choose to, and or have better, or I guess more scalable onboarding mechanisms like custodial wallets. I think those are things like if for viewers, right, really pay attention to those are incredibly important. The two things I'll add that maybe were touched on less. One, I'm really excited about where distribution is going. So I'm a big fan of Hyperplay and some of the Web3 game launchers. But I think what's even more exciting is that Apple is actually experimenting with Axie and other mobile-first Web3 games. That's incredibly important, so that we don't have to all that infrastructure, all that device adoption, right, is already there. So I think that's something we should definitely unpack in this conversation. And then I think the one other piece I'd just say is, I'm really excited for streaming and people actually getting and playing this and kind of acting as orators for really good games. It's hard for me to think of a better use case for, expensive in-game NFTs than like the extraction gameplay models, right? You go in, you collect something that's really high value, and you have to get out, right, in a certain time period. Like that is going to be so much fun to watch. That's going to get streamed millions and millions of times. It's just such a good fit for what we're talking about. And there's other types of games that I'm really excited about. But yeah, I'll kind of pause there. Super excited to be with you guys. This is great.
Thank you, Marham. Next up, we got Lando. Lando, welcome to the panel, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. Gosh, that was a really amazing start to a really good space here. So Andrew said a bunch of really cool things. He hit on a lot of passion points. The biggest one for me, so you can probably, I should introduce myself before I just jump into it. So I've been in 3D, I've been working in 3D industry, not on the game development side, but on a non-traditional side that kind of bridged me over. I come from building information modeling and virtual design coordination, and that's for the AEC world, and as well as construction and architecture, firms. So I got into Web3 and NFTs. I mean, this was 2.5 years ago. I've been in crypto for 7, but definitely NFTs are newer. And I went and just built a collection. I was hired as a contractor. I won't plug any of the project, but I built the collection. It was architecture based. They were building a game in Unreal Engine, and it was it was a pretty special thing to be a part of. Mistakes were made, things were done, especially with how funds were raised and the funds were used, and vision was never aligned. And being in the driver's seat on product on that side of things, it really opened my eyes to how things should be going. And along with the interoperability piece to it, that promise was so lofty, even from the beginning. A lot of that technology, it totally varies on the platform and your model authoring programs, and there's so many things that go into that. And everybody was looking for a quick solution, a tool, an import tool. And there is a solution, but it's not something that's it's not available, and it's through NVIDIA's Omniverse. But that's something you have to have an RTX for. You have to be inside of their Omniverse. You have to have basically the programs that they're allowing to bring in and then used in their Omniverse. That technology is not shared. And I wouldn't say we're 5 to 7, but I definitely think we're about 3 years away from like being able to share that, do it properly, and it actually follow through on a promise for creators, for people that are in the crowd that buy NFTs or create NFTs or even buy in-game assets for that matter, and create their own in-game assets and sell them and monetize. And that's a big part, is owning those assets. That's a huge part of Web3 gaming. That's your ownership. So if you can't create and launch, it's hard to sell that vision. But another point too, and it's the high friction. It is the high friction. I'm a huge advocate of racing games. I've played Call of Duty. I played every single game, everything from RuneScape to Rust to I love racing games though, and I'm a big investor in some big NFTs, and everybody knows about the Porsche, and I love the Porsche one, and I'm in there, and I see some folks out there too that are in the Porsche one, but they're releasing 3D assets. They're not saying they're interoperable, but we're going to get them, and that's cool. That's a cool feature to have. We get to own those when the process is done. But what I wanted to point out is like Forza, for example, Horizon. You can sit in there and drive. I've spent 100+ hours driving, and I have a simulator wheel and a whole setup. I love being a part inside the game and unlocking cars and experiencing that. And it doesn't cost me anything. It's free. And one part that it could be seamless and frictionless transaction is being able to receive these cars for free. And the time you invest into the game itself, the time you invest into earning that asset to experience in the game, is up to you if you want to sell it. But it's also up to you if you want to connect your wallet and sell it for money in order for somebody else to get it. I think those types of transactions that are more related to minimal impact to the actual game and the gamer itself, but have very nice connectivity, like Andrew was saying, with quick connectivity, allows that person to monetize the time that they're actually putting into the game, and it doesn't impact the actual theme or the mechanics of how things are supposed to operate in the game. I think right now everything is ass backwards. We're selling NFTs to raise money to build a game that's not here. It's like the new kid on the blocks approach, and it effectively didn't work. So I think the next step, and I'll stop talking here, but the next step for me is hopefully we see another Steam of Web3 that embraces that, or maybe Steam will open the doors to it, to where they do a little bit of nudging into that direction, but more into less friction and more into adoption of games that aren't just entering the space just because they have this cool NFT, but because they already have this entire creative director that's got a game vision that's been working for 20 years and can build games and assemble a team. And, and I'll see if there's a VC in here too. That's what they look for, the quality of people. You look for the quality that you can get out of a team in order to build a vision. And in the past, all we've had is these NFTs that could become a game inside of a game, and that's what I was a part of too. And wow, we went about that wrong. So it's a learning lesson too, and I think that's a big part of today is talking about those lessons that we've taken, from this past year or two, and turn that into actual, education, like you said, education. So, okay, I'll mute.
Thank you, Lando. I want to pass it to Anthony, and then we'll go to Miko.
I was a little late getting my hand up, so I'm probably going to echo some thoughts. And before I start, just to preface Landon, that was a beautiful point in talking about the lessons, because I consider this entire space in its research and development phase right now. That's Web3 as a whole. Even DeFi itself is still going through research and development. But I guess I'll start by introducing myself for those that don't know. I'm Anthony Francis. Some refer to me as Mr. Dip. I came into this space, believe it or not, as a day trader originally, but my professional background being in sales and marketing and business development led me to the professional side of things in Web3. And through my investment practices, gaming, my research and due diligence, I fell in love with it immediately. I was already a gamer. The market fit of the technology in the gaming industry just made sense to me. And in doing so, myself and my business partner, Croissant, down in the audience, have become advisors in this space. And we help startup games, very, very early startup ideas, try to scale upwards and conduct the appropriate business practices and connect them with the right people to try and become successful organizations, essentially. Now, in that, the thoughts I'm going to echo, there are two major points that I love to summarize. It's the fundamentals and it's the onboarding process. These two things that we're constantly, going through this material with our clients all the time. And when we talk about the fundamentals of business are essential, and the fundamentals of building a gaming product are essential. I love asset ownership. It's a brilliant idea. But if your assets are terrible and you can't use them in a game of any enjoyment, what are they worth? Nobody cares about asset ownership if they don't want to own the assets. Interoperability, it was explained at length. And yeah, we are years away from it. And there's so many issues presented, even beyond the technology. The IP issues, it becomes a problem. And I think Andrew made a brilliant point of talking about having IP controlled within an ecosystem and having that interoperability by a single studio. That's a brilliant process to prove that concept. And we move kind of away from the fundamentals of building an actual fun game, having a high quality game, having a gameplay loop that is engaging and interesting. The onboarding process is the biggest challenge I think everybody's facing. And I like to refer back to the analogy of the emergence of the internet. It was a brilliant time in history. I think the blockchain is very similar. And when we think back on it, nobody cared about servers. Nobody cared about TCP/IP protocol. Nobody cared about networks. What they wanted was a browser they could open up quickly, easily, provided them the content that they wanted to digest, and they could go ahead and navigate and enjoy that process. That's very much like the blockchain. Most gamers, the average consumer does not care about the blockchain technology. They really don't. Decentralization is a mantra we've all grasped because we're enthusiasts of it. But the average consumer doesn't care. They want the value proposition upfront. They don't want to spend a fortune to do so, and they want a smooth, fluid, and familiar experience. They want to be able to just dive in. And with the shortened attention spans of today, that becomes more and more obvious, and it's a big priority. So, some of the thoughts that were mentioned in some of the points that were touched on, I thought were absolutely brilliant, and I think we're all really well aligned. This is going to be an interesting space.
Thank you, Anthony. Miko, back to you.
Yeah, I guess as the kind of panel's resident VC, I guess one of the things that we think a lot about is, obviously, first and foremost, team and game quality. So, that I think that does mirror what the previous speaker said. I think to me, though, what we look for are sort of problems that can be solved with money, right? Obviously, some problems are unsolvable with money. And to me, the thing that we see happening is that there are definitely incredibly solvable problems that are in front of us. We think that, one of the easily solvable problems is onboarding experience. We're seeing already really wonderful solutions there. In terms of none of our games are fun, that's super easy, to be honest, right? Are there humans on Earth who know how to make fun games? There are, right? So then the question is, can we pay them to make fun games? Yes. Can we pay them to make fun games that involve Web3 technologies? Now, here's the thing is that the best games in the world are not mercenary games, right? So the thing that becomes really interesting is that they're really games of passion, right? They're games of love. People love games, and the people who make the best games kind of pour all of their attention and devotion into those games, right? So the thing that becomes interesting is like, well, what's the motivation? So I don't think the motivation is fixable with money, because I just think if it's pure greed only, I don't think it's enough, right? But my point is that, you know, I got a really big brain adjust talking to an indie dev from northern Sweden at GDC, and you know, we were sitting around this fire on an outdoor patio, you know, at a party that we'd hosted, and you know, he basically said this. He said, "You know why I'm happy to see Web3 VCs, right?" And I was like, "Oh, you know, tell me the reason, right?" And he basically said, "You and I are going to F the publishers," right? And he didn't actually say F, like he actually said the whole thing. But like, you know, the thing that entertained me about this is that um, the publishers of Web 2 have kind of really wore out their welcome. I think that the pattern that has become really toxic and intolerable is really that it's controlled by suits, right? So, you know, the thing that's really interesting is you know, I was on a panel at ETH Denver called, you know, "Why Gamers Hate NFTs." And the thing that's so interesting is that the biggest kind of case study of full-throated rejection was Ghost Recon, right, by Ubisoft, right? So they launched an NFT, right? Ghost Recon is a pretty popular game, and the community utterly shut it down. Like they sold, I think, 3 NFTs of total, and then they had to refund all 3. You know, everybody basically was mad, right? And to me, I think it's a misunderstanding, right? Which is, I think what gamers hate is greed and suits. And I think the reason they hate greed is simply because that's the history of, you know, ruining games, right? Like, you know, like recently, you know, Activision just sent a legal cease and desist to the team building SM2, which, you know, is kind of typical in the industry, you know. And so the thing that the industry is characterized by is crunch. You know, so if you're building games, you know, crunch, right? Crunch is, we have a deadline, we're going to mash out all the bugs, and it's going to be a hellscape for, like, you know, the next however long, 3 months, right? So there's sort of death marches and crunches and all these things, right? So the energy of kind of do or die pervades the game development industry, right? But the problem is not do or die, right? Do or die is fine, especially if you have passion and you love the game, you're excited about the universe, can't wait to play, can't wait to show your friends, you know, you'll definitely crunch, right? But the problem is do and die, right? So do and die is basically what happens is that you ship the game, you put in all the work, and then the suits show up and say, okay, you know, we don't think this game will be fun, and then they cancel it, right? So the thing that's really intolerable about that is that the suits don't actually know, right? So one of the great things that I see coming in Web3 gaming is really novel ways to fund game development, right? So I mean, you know, one of the case studies that, you know, obviously Illuvium's an amazing case study of that. You know, myself and my son actually participated in the, you know, the ICO there. So, you know, we were early enthusiasts and supporters, you know, can't wait to play, you know, sort of fully released games, you know, so we're definitely excited about that. You know, we do see that this new funding mechanism is something that I call the decentralized producer credit. Right. So the thing that's amazing is when you think about insanely rich people, like, you know, for example, like Vitalik, right? So I happen to know that Vitalik's main on World of Warcraft was No Morlock, Affliction, actually. So, you know, he's a gamer through and through, right? And obviously there's a kind of an apocryphal story that he created Ethereum so that, you know, Blizzard wouldn't be able to nerf the drain life component, you know, the drain life spell and the kind of healing component of that spell, right? So that's the apocryphal story behind the creation of Ethereum itself, right? So that the thing that's interesting to me about this is that we're going to be living on a world. So my fund assumes that crypto is going to do really, really well, right? So it to me, my fund assumes that they're going to be insanely wealthy crypto whales around. So the thing that boomers did when they became rich is they became movie producers, right? And the movie producer is the guy who's dressed in sweats, who's on the set. He's kind of eating the craft food service. He's like annoying the actresses. He's talking to the director, telling the director to do things that make no sense at all, is almost entirely being ignored, but has kind of managed to kind of buy his way onto the set, right? That's the producer, right? And what does the producer get? The producer gets a little black and white name credit at the end of the movie. And that's it, right? For what? Millions of dollars. What would be more interesting is if you had a decentralized producer credit where you don't get this black and white credit. What you get is some kind of a skin where when you walk around in this universe, everybody knows who you are. Everyone's like, oh, wow, like here comes one of the people who helped create this game, right? Maybe that, so I think to me, like this kind of revolution is not a revolution of gamers, right? I think we've already pointed out that gamers are indifferent to NFT. I think someone else astutely pointed out that they should be indifferent to NFT the same way they should be indifferent to TCP/IP, right? Which is that it adds incredibly valuable features to a game, but since they've never experienced ownership of a game, they don't even know they want those features. So why should we centralize that and talk about the technology itself, right? So NFT is stupid. Gamers are going to buy guns and skins and boats and ships and spaceships and land and everything they've already been buying to the tune of billions of dollars, right? Which is digital assets that happen to be implemented this way, right? And I think to me, that's fine. And the reason why I think free-to-play is so important is because the free-to-play game designers are the best humans on the entire world to convince you to buy a digital asset that until last week you didn't even know existed, and now you absolutely have to get your wallet out and buy it. Like those are the best people in the world for solving that problem, which is a sales problem, right? So to me, I'm super happy about that. I'm super happy about free to play. I'm super happy about free to own. I'm super happy about play to own. Like those are all great upper funnel mechanics. I think the place where we're lacking in really, really astute economic design that provides fundamental respect for the user's time and doesn't make it kind of fungible with money, with the user skill, which doesn't make the user skill like pay to win, fungible with money, and that also respects things like fame, So I think to me, there are ways in which money can ruin games. And I think that we're lacking good design to make money flowing into game economies, like make the game better, right? So rather than making the game worse, right? So I think money flowing into games can, by design, make the game better, and they can also, by lack of design, make games worse. So I think that's the problem that I'd love to see better solutions for, because those are problems that are design problems, and those are solved not by pouring money, but by adding skill and knowledge. So anyhow, that's my rant. I see some other hands up, so I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, Miko. Yeah, definitely another mic drop there.